Have you heard the old Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times? Whether you are a Republican or a Democrat or none of the above, you got to admit we are on, pick your adjective, wild, frightening, maddening ride. Are we at the brink of war with North Korea? The FBI raids the home of President Trump's former campaign chair as part of the Russia investigation. The president takes on his own Senate Majority Leader who, like he needs to get anything done in Congress. So much for any quiet August vacation. Joining us for more is Jack Brill, the vice chair of the Sarasota County Republican Party, Barry Edwards, a Democratic political consultant, and Wendy March, the dean of political reporters in the Tampa Bay area. Thank you all for joining us. Gentlemen, the situation with North Korea changes really at the moment. Just before we came on, the president held yet another news conference, and I'm interested in what your take, because obviously North Korea has been a problem, a thorn in the side of presidents going back decades now, but something seems different this time. And Barry, what do you think that is?
I think, well, as each year passes, they get more and more capable, and so therefore they're more of a threat. But I think China issued a statement in the last couple of days that they would not defend North Korea if they attacked the United States. So I think it was pretty clear. So if they attack the United States or South Korea, they're not going to defend them. But they said they would come to their defense if we attacked first. So
Jack,
I think it's escalation.
The president has said for weeks now that the era of strategic patience is over. On the other hand, he has come under some criticism in terms of, let's say, his colorful metaphors. What goes through your mind when you hear that? And then you compare that to Secretary Tillerson or Secretary Mattis.
Well, I would look at the good news from that is those folks are doing their jobs. You know, what's going on in the back channels, what we don't hear about is really good that we don't hear about it. You know, there are probably conversations going on through China or directly. But the president's, you know, he's standing up for the United States. He's standing up, especially when the Guam threat, you know, and as we all know his personality of the last few years. You throw a bomb you throw something at us, we're going to throw it right back. And
yeah, but those were just words. These are nuclear, you know.
Well,
this is reckless.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess you look at the history of this whole process. I mean, we were looking at even President Clinton, when he sent President Carter over to negotiate, we ended up giving him $5 billion in another either George 43 or President Clinton, we gave him a nuclear reactor we thought we'd go away, all the way back from President Bush 41. This regime is, the family, obviously the father and now the son, has been going on, and they just don't have any care for the rest of the world, obviously.
But Wendy, as we have often heard over the last couple of weeks, there are no good military options. Any military option, even if it was conventional, would mean tens of thousands of people dying in South Korea and perhaps elsewhere. Do you get a sense here in our part of Florida, people are, what's their sense in terms of the real possibility of armed conflict with North Korea?
Well, I don't think anybody can listen to what's been happening and listen to the president's language and not be a little bit worried. The difference between this incident, and there have been other incidents in the past where actions were worse. In 1994, the U.S. literally came close to bombing North Korea, came close to evacuating Americans from South Korea. The difference now, obviously, is just simply the North's nuclear capability. I think Trump's language, though, is aimed not at the Koreans, it's aimed at shoring up his own base and sounding tough. Both sides, I think, Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump, when they use this kind of language, they're not talking to each other, they're talking to their own populations. And that's what I think Trump is trying to do. He says the era of strategic patience is over, but he's continuing it. There's nothing else he really can do because there is no good solution.
I want to give you a quick chance to respond to that.
The most telling thing, though, is in Guam, the Air Force Base, the alert level has not been raised as of this morning, So they've been threatened. And so that tells me that there's more going on in the background if they haven't raised their threat level for the island.
I'm not sure what that would even mean.
Let's just pause for 1 second. We are just getting warmed up. We'll have more on this topic right after we check the weather. Playing chicken with North Korean nukes, the FBI raids the home of the president's former campaign chair. The president takes on his own main man in the Senate. How is all this playing here on the Suncoast? Joining us for more is Jack Brill, the vice chair of the Sarasota County Republican Party, Barry Edwards, a Democratic political consultant, and Wendy March, the dean of political reporters in the Tampa Bay area. Wendy, you said in the first segment that you thought that the president's rhetoric involving North Korea is really for consumption of his base here at home. There's been some new polling out that his base is declining even among Republicans. According to a new poll, 71% of Republicans approve of the president. That's down from 83% just a month ago. Does the president have a problem even amongst his biggest supporters, Barry?
He has a problem amongst his supporters because he's not doing anything. For him, it's still a reality show. He complains about not being able to get stuff done with the Department of Defense or Department of State. There's 40 political appointees in the Department of Defense. He's appointed 4 people. And anybody he sends to the Senate, they're not using the filibuster, they sail right through. So his base is saying, you didn't do anything on health care, you haven't done anything on tax reform, you haven't done anything on foreign policy, you haven't done anything. All he does is talk and talk and talk.
But in all fairness, there were more political appointees sent to the Senate for confirmation in July than there were combined the first 6 months. So they're getting the process.
So
it's taking a long time.
So we've gone from an F performance to a D performance. We're still not in an A performance.
But we need to, at least you got to get people appointed.
Jack, let me ask you this. The numbers I quoted were national numbers. 71% of Republicans support the president. That's down from 83%. Is your perception that may be different, at least here on the Suncoast?
Yeah, it really is. The Trump supporters, I mean, as we all know, Trump won by 26,000 votes in Sarasota County. That base has not eroded at this point. I think you can sit there and talk about the president's erosion of support, but Congress's approval ratings are a lot lower. So I think a lot of the Trump supporters are saying, beat on Congress because they haven't gotten anything done in 7 years, and they're still not getting anything done.
And for Jack's point, elections are always about alternatives, and they just polled Hillary Clinton. Her favorability, even though she's not president, is lower, if you can believe it, than Donald Trump's. So the Democrats have to find a message, a unifying message, if they're going to compete.
Well, the Democrats are trying to do that, and they unveiled it within the last week or two, and it landed with a thud even among Democrats.
Right. Was it not a New Deal,
Better deal.
Better deal.
And I guess, why is it, the Democrats and Republicans, they have smart people working in back offices thinking about strategy. Why is it so difficult for the Democratic Party to come up with ideas and a unified strategy to take advantage of a president who is having difficulty?
Because the Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, because of the gerrymandering of congressional districts, has become far to the left of the normal Democratic voter. And so what would appeal to the mainstream Democratic voter is not what excites people that vote in Democratic primaries in these heavily Democratic districts. So Nancy Pelosi is never going to sell in Sarasota. And the same thing for a lot of the Republican members on the other side. So the people that work for these extreme liberals or extreme conservatives just don't have a feeling for what's mainstream America. So,
Wendy, that brings me to a conversation that you and I have a lot, which involve the congressional races that are taking place in the general area. You know, the Democratic Congressional Campaign has targeted Vern Buchanan. You have the Florida 15th Congressional District, which I'm a little bit familiar with, and Gus Bilirakis, but you do not have strong Democrats running in any of those districts as of yet. Why?
Well, the Democrats are saying all over the country and in our area, the Tampa area, that they're experiencing a major surge of grassroots reaction against Donald Trump that's going to create a tidal wave of support for them. But so far, it's just not showing up in the form of candidates running for office, filing for the 2018 elections, or showing up in some of the special elections. There's a special election going on right now in Hillsborough County. There's no prominent Democrat in that. As you just mentioned, 3 congressmen in our Tampa Bay area, Bilirakis, Buchanan, and Ross, no prominent Democrat filed against any of them. It's not showing up yet. Democrats are waiting to see some evidence. Now, the special election, state Senate special election going on down in Miami-Dade. I'm beginning to get inklings that there are a number of Democratic candidates that are waiting to see the outcome of that special election because it's a legitimate swing district.
And also the mayor's race in St. Petersburg.
And they'll see, you know, they're waiting for that to see whether there is actually this backlash, anti-Trump backlash building.
A couple of issues I do want to get to, and one is the president's new war, the flavor of this week. He is going after the Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, and on one hand, Jack, it's understandable because the president is disappointed that nothing was done in terms of repealing, replacing Obamacare. But if he aspires to get anything done, Mitch McConnell's your quarterback.
Well, and at the same time, at the beginning of the week, I was excited the president was taking on the Democratic senator from Connecticut, Blumenthal. So I thought, all right, it's going to be a new week. Obviously, it would not be any of our preference to have these conversations. My hope is that, you know, while the out front conversations are happening, there's back channel, you know, people are talking so that we can get these things done. We've had a long time to get various issues. We've got to get tax reform done. We've got to get the infrastructure bill done. Yes, healthcare has to be done because, you know, no matter, even if nothing is done, you're looking at.
You can't do tax reform unless you do the health care.
Or vice versa.
Let me make this observation. President Trump, when he was running for office, said that John McCain was not a hero. And it just so happens John McCain was the deciding vote on repealing Obamacare. These people are people. I mean, they don't forget about these things. And so if you go after Mitch McConnell, why would Mitch McConnell really want to have your back?
Well, one thing about this is it's not going to do the Republicans in Congress any good for McConnell or anyone else to make Trump's administration look worse than it already looks. That's not going to help them. Now, since the initial flurry, McConnell's statement, I think it was last Monday, about Trump's excessive expectations and then all the responses from Trump, McConnell has kept it kind of quiet, hasn't he? I haven't heard him say, I haven't heard a peep out of him since then. He wants to quell this. It doesn't do him any good for the Trump administration to go crashing into the toilet. That only hurts him and the chances of his fellow senators in 2018. Now, he may be furious and steaming and biting his tongue, but it doesn't do him any good for the Trump administration.
A couple of other issues really quickly. The president, as we've been talking about, has certainly been going after North Korea. He has been going after his Republican leader in the U.S. Senate. But he basically said the other day that you know, he thanked Russian President Putin for going after, for kicking the Americans out of Russia. He basically said that Putin did us a great favor because we wanted to cut down on payroll.
And you know, it was all sarcasm.
I disagree.
Even though we do need to cut down on payroll in the federal government because we've got a $21 trillion budget deficit that this country, God knows how we're going to pay this all back for our
Jack,
future generations.
Late this afternoon, a reporter asked the president, were you intending to be sarcastic? And he said, no, he was serious.
I still think he plays the national media to the way he wants them to follow to create a story. It was sarcasm. Obviously, you know, losing those assets in Russia, you knew something was going to happen after the Obama administration threw out the Russians from the Long Island and Maryland estates. So it's tit for tat. And we got to remember, Putin waited to see how it was going to go with President Trump, and he waited till he didn't get what he wanted.
Well, hold on one second. The Obama administration threw out about 35 Russians.
Who were spies.
Right. The Russians threw out about 500 Americans. So what are we doing about it?
And it's a game of, well, if you do this, I'm going to do a little more, and you do this, I'm going to do a little more. So,
Barry?
Here again, he doesn't understand the functions of government. First of all, for the deficit, these employees, which I think he believes that, the debt, defense, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are what, 75, 80% of our budget.
80
so
plus.
We're not going to save any money by not putting people in the State Department. In fact, the Secretary of Defense has said that every dollar we spend on the State Department in foreign aid, he saves $10. Okay. So he's wrong.
We have to take a quick break, but we will be right back. Final thoughts in just one moment. North Korea, FBI raids, no love for Congress. Our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. And Wendy, one other subject I wanted to get to is the FBI raids on Paul Manafort's home in Washington, the president's former campaign chair. What's your take on that?
Well, it's, to begin with, a pre-dawn FBI raid with a search warrant in a white-collar crime case like this one, that is very unusual. It suggests a couple of things to me. They wanted banking and finance and tax records. It suggests that they may well have thought there would be some effort to destroy or hide the evidence. The other thing it suggests is taking that tough a line, pushing the guy around like that, suggests that they're trying to flip him, trying to get him to turn state's evidence. We can't really say anything real definitive about it yet because the affidavit that backs up the search warrant, which is what gives you the real story here, that hasn't been unsealed, or at least it hadn't been at the last I heard this afternoon.
Barry, you know, there are some people who are saying that, and the president did talk about that. He said it was very serious, that he thought that the special prosecutor was trying to set a signal. He felt bad for Manafort. You know, poll after poll shows that Democrats care about this, Republicans not so much. So whether, you know, what would you say that our viewers' take should be of this?
Well, I've always said, like with Hillary Clinton, I was very critical of her handling of the email server, is if Republicans really are serious, they need to hold their own side accountable to the same standard that they hold Democrats. Otherwise, we're not going to get any better.
Jack?
I think it was a display of, you know, Paul Manafort's sort of the pawn in the overall process. So they was sent with the message that, okay, this is how it's going to be to scare everybody else or potentially anybody else. So I think they didn't need to go into the, you know, his house and raid at 6 o'clock in the morning. They would have, you know, they could have done it in a much more diplomatic
But
way.
when you say that, the MO on the special prosecutor is he doesn't send signals. He's a fairly straightforward guy, and if you are going to get what they call a no-knock warrant, you have to show a judge that there is probable cause that a crime has been committed.
Don't disagree that part, but I also think that potentially some of the FBI is still very upset about Comey being dismissed, and this is one way to get back at one of Trump's people doing it. So
Okay.
Who knows?
We're going to have to leave it there, but before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about President Trump and the face-off with North Korea. The president has received some criticism, even from members of his own party like John McCain, for his fire and fury rhetoric. Lisa says this is not being a leader, it is being a bully. War and violence are never the first options. Jen says no one sane wants to throw the first punch, but when you're dealing with someone like the North Korean dictator who is just playing off his rocker and evil, you have to bear in mind that throwing the first blow may indeed protect many lives. Finally, Ashley has some advice for the president. Be diplomatic and stop talking about it. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions. They're on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Jack Brill is the vice chair of the Republican Party of Sarasota. Barry Edwards is a Democratic political consultant, and Wendy March is a political reporter in the Tampa Bay area. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and when we return, we'll have a final look at your weather. Plus, what did President Trump say about North Korea? Now, we'll tell you after the break.